15 years ago, I took $500,000 from a billionaire's lawyers to sign a paper that said my son wasn't his. I was 19, pregnant, alone. I signed because I didn't know how else to survive. Now, my son worships him, quotes his interviews, hangs his face on his wall like a father he never had. Stellan Cross, America's favorite philanthropist, the dying billionaire whose blood runs through my son's veins. This document, this signature, 15 years in a locked box, and tonight, I'm holding it again. 3 weeks. That's how long I have before my son shakes hands with the father I erased. And I still don't know whether to tell him the truth, or let him meet his hero, never knowing that hero is the reason he grew up without a dad. $500,000, a piece of paper, and a choice no one should have to make at 19. Most people say they'd never sign. Most people say they'd fight. Most people have never been pregnant, broke, and alone in a room full of lawyers who hold all the cards. I wonder what you would have done in that conference room. Not what you think you'd do, but what you'd actually do, with $40 in your pocket and a baby on the way. Now, let me take you back to the beginning. He was already reading it aloud before I could set down the dish. "Mom! Mom!" Caleb stood in the kitchen doorway, scholarship letter clutched in both hands, blue-gray eyes bright enough to cut glass. "One of 12 finalists, out of 4,000 applicants. I'm meeting him. I'm actually meeting Stellan Cross." I dried my hands on a towel, smiled. The smile I've been perfecting for 15 years, the one that hides the bodies buried beneath the floorboards of our ordinary life. "That's incredible, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." He crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, still growing into those long limbs, still believing good news meant good things, and wrapped his arms around me. I held him back. My grip lasted a beat too long. He didn't notice. He never notices. "The Legacy Scholarship covers full tuition, Mom. Full. And the interview is at his estate. His actual estate. I'll be in the same room with him before..." His voice caught. "Before he's gone." I pulled back to look at him. 15 years old. Dark brown hair swept to the side. That angular face emerging from boyhood. And those eyes. God, those eyes. The exact shade of gray-blue that used to look up at me from a hospital bed when I was 19 and terrified. The same eyes that watched me sign my name to a lie. "What are you going to say to him?" I asked. Voice steady. Hands not. Caleb's face lit up. He'd been waiting for this question. "I've been practicing. Want to hear?" No. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him to throw that letter in the trash and forget the name Stellan Cross ever existed. I wanted to confess everything, right there in our modest kitchen with the dishes still drying and his joy still intact. Instead, I said, "Of course I do." He straightened his spine, cleared his throat, and began quoting the man whose DNA runs through every cell of his body. "The measure of a man is what he leaves behind." Stellan Cross said that in his 2019 commencement speech. I've watched it 43 times. "I want to leave something behind, Mom. I want to matter." The words landed like stones in my chest. He wants to matter. To a world that paid me $500,000 to make him disappear. I hugged him again, tighter this time. Not because I was proud, though I was, but because I knew that in 3 weeks, I might lose him forever. Midnight. Caleb asleep. Stellan Cross interviews playing on loop through his bedroom wall. I could hear the billionaire's voice, muffled but unmistakable, teaching my son how to be a man. I stood in my closet, reaching past winter coats I never wear, past boxes of tax returns from years I barely survived. The lockbox was where I left it. 15 years gathering dust behind the lie of a normal life. The NDA was on top, yellowed, creased. My 19-year-old signature at the bottom, shaky, desperate, barely legible. Beneath it, the payment receipt. $500,000 wired to an account I'd opened that same morning. Money I'd never held before and didn't know how to hold after. I sat on the closet floor, back against winter coats, and did the math. The house. Down payment, $112,000. From that money. Caleb's braces, his summer camps, the used Honda that got me to 2 jobs for 7 years. From that money. His college fund, the one I've been adding to every month, the one he thinks came from sacrifice and overtime and a mother who loved him enough to go without. $83,000. Seed money from that check. Interest compounding on a lie. The clause at the bottom of the NDA was highlighted in yellow. I must have done that myself years ago. A reminder of what? Breaking silence would cost. In the event of disclosure, the undersigned agrees to full restitution of all funds received, plus compensatory damages not to exceed 3 times the original payment amount. $1.5 million. If I told the truth. We don't have $1.5 million. We have a 2-bedroom house with a mortgage I'm 3 years from paying off. We have a Honda with 94,000 miles. We have a college fund that wouldn't survive a lawyer's first phone call. Everything I built for Caleb, every stability, every ordinary comfort, every night he slept without worrying about rent, all of it traces back to this paper. Confessing doesn't just mean losing his trust, it means losing his future. I put the NDA back, closed the box, returned it to its hiding place behind the winter coats, and I understood, with the clarity of a woman who's been running from this moment for 15 years, that the trap I signed was never just about silence. It was about making sure I could never afford the truth. 2 days later, dinner. The last normal meal we'd ever have, though neither of us knew it. Caleb pushed pasta around his plate. That look on his face, the one I've learned to dread, the look that precedes the question. Mom, why don't I have a dad? I set down my fork, took a breath, reached for the answer I've been giving since he was old enough to ask. He wasn't ready to be a father. Some people aren't. It's not a reflection of you. Caleb nodded. He always nods, accepts the half-truth like he accepts everything I give him, without suspicion, without resentment. Just quiet processing from a boy who learned early that some questions don't have satisfying answers. But tonight, he wasn't finished. Stellan Cross says, "The measure of a man is what he leaves behind." He looked up at me, those blue-gray eyes searching for something I couldn't give him. I've been thinking about that, about what I want to leave behind. I picked up my fork, pushed a piece of chicken I couldn't taste. What do you mean? I never had a dad to show me how to be a man. His voice was steady, matter-of-fact. The voice of someone who's made peace with an absence. But Stellan Cross, the way he talks about legacy, about impact, about using what you have to help people who don't have anything, he taught me, Mom. Through interviews and speeches and his foundation work, he taught me what a real man looks like. I set down my fork before I dropped it. My son, sitting across from me in our modest kitchen, eating dinner I made with grocery money I stretched from a paycheck that never quite covered everything, was explaining how a billionaire on television taught him to be a man. The same billionaire whose blood runs through his veins, whose eyes he inherited, whose bone structure is emerging from his teenage face with every passing month. "I want to matter, Mom." Caleb's jaw set, that look of determination that reminds me so much of the man I've spent 15 years pretending doesn't exist. When I meet him at the gala, I want him to know that his words actually changed someone's life, that I'm going to be someone because of what he taught me. I swallowed, nodded, said something about how proud I was. But all I could think was, he already knows you, Caleb. He just chose not to know you back. Saturday morning, Caleb at a friend's house. 3 hours of silence, the most dangerous thing for a woman with secrets. I drove without thinking. Muscle memory. 20 minutes across town, past the new developments and the strip malls, until the buildings got older and the sidewalks got cracked, and I found myself on Maple Street. The apartment was still there, 3rd floor. Fire escape rusting the same way it rusted 15 years ago. Same water-stained brick, same bars on the 1st floor windows. I parked across the street and let the memories come. Flashback. The conference room was cold, climate-controlled to a temperature that made my hands shake. Or maybe that was terror. I couldn't tell anymore. 19 years old, 5 months pregnant. The last $40 I owned spent on a bus ticket and a blouse I thought looked professional. 3 lawyers sat across from me. Gray suits, gold cufflinks. The kind of men who'd never eaten ramen for dinner or calculated whether they could afford both electricity and prenatal vitamins in the same month. Harlan Thorne was the one who spoke. "You understand what you're signing, Ms. Vance. Not a question, a formality. You are stating, under oath, that Stellan Cross is not the biological father of your child." I looked at the document, the clause, the check sitting at the edge of the table like bait. What if I don't sign? The lawyers exchanged glances. Thorne smiled, the smile of a man who'd made problems disappear for 40 years and was about to make another one vanish. "Then you leave with nothing. You raise the child on your own, with no support, no acknowledgement, and no legal claim to anything. Mr. Cross's team will ensure any paternity suit is protracted, expensive, unlikely to succeed against his legal resources." $500,000. A number I couldn't comprehend, enough to disappear, enough to build something. Enough to give my child a life that didn't involve cockroaches and counting quarters. Or nothing. A legal battle against a billionaire. Years of fighting. Losing. I picked up the pen. The signature took 3 seconds. The shame has lasted 15 years. I stared at the apartment building. The fire escape where I used to sit at night, hand on my belly, wondering how I'd survive. I survived. I just don't know if Caleb will survive learning how. Sunday night, Caleb asked me to watch his practice video, the introduction speech he'd prepared for the scholarship ceremony. He sat next to me on the couch, laptop balanced on the coffee table. His face on screen, nervous, eager, so young. "My name is Caleb Vance. I'm 15 years old, and I'm here because of Stellan Cross." I watched myself watching, hands folded, face composed, the performance of a supportive mother. "I never knew my father." Caleb's recorded voice filled our living room. "He left before I was born. My mom doesn't talk about him much. I don't think there's much to talk about." He didn't look at me. He didn't know he should. "But Stellan Cross..." Video Caleb leaned forward, intensity burning in those inherited eyes. "He showed me what a real man leaves behind. Not money, not buildings, but impact. The way you change lives that you'll never even meet. My son, my beautiful, brilliant son, explaining to a camera how a stranger taught him the lessons his father should have. I want to be someone, Mr. Cross. I want to matter. And I want you to know that everything I become, everything I leave behind, started with you. The video ended. Caleb looked at me, hope naked on his face. What do you think? I could have told him then. The words were right there, lodged in my throat like glass. He's your father, Caleb. Stellan Cross is your father. And I took money to erase him from your birth certificate. And everything you think you know about why you don't have a dad is a lie. It's perfect, I said. He'll love it. My son smiled, relieved, proud. And my silence became something worse than a lie. It became a choice. The next morning, I woke to a voicemail. Unknown number, but a voice I recognized, one I'd hoped never to hear again. Ms. Vance. Harlan Thorne. Still the same measured cadence, still the same quiet threat wrapped in professional polish. It's been a long time. I see your son has applied for our scholarship program. Caleb, is it? 15 years old. Interesting coincidence. We should talk. Before you do anything foolish. Call me back. You have until Friday. The line went dead. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in hand. The system that bought my silence 15 years ago had noticed my son's name on a list, and now it was calling in the debt. Tuesday morning. I called him from the parking lot of Caleb's school, engine running, hands shaking. 3 rings. Then that voice, 15 years older but unchanged in its quiet authority. Ms. Vance? Harlan Thorne, same measured cadence, same way of saying my name like it was a file number. I wondered if you'd call. You didn't give me much choice. No, I didn't. I watched parents walking their kids toward the entrance. Normal families, uncomplicated mornings. Lives built on foundations that wouldn't collapse if someone said the wrong name. Someone flagged your son's scholarship application, Harlan continued. Caleb Vance, 15 years old. Son of Linnea Vance, formerly of apartment 4C, 1847 Maple Street. The math was obvious. So you're what? Warning me? Threatening me? I'm reminding you. His voice dropped half a register. The NDA you signed is still enforceable, Ms. Vance. Every clause, every penalty, full. Repayment of funds received, plus compensatory damages up to 3 times the original amount. $1.5 million. You'll lose everything you built with that money. The house, the car, your son's college fund. All of it. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. A mother walked by my window, laughing at something her daughter said. Ordinary. Safe. What do you want from me, Harlan? What I've always wanted. Silence. Your son is about to meet Stellan Cross. He's going to shake his hand, accept a scholarship, and walk away inspired. That's the story. That's the only story. And if I don't cooperate? Then I file for immediate repayment. Your assets get frozen pending litigation. And your son, he let the silence stretch. Your son learns the truth in the worst possible way. From lawyers, in court documents, with journalists asking questions. Stay silent, Ms. Vance, for both your sakes. The line went dead. I sat there, engine running, parents dispersing. The system that bought my silence 15 years ago hadn't forgotten. It had just been waiting. And now it was reminding me who owned whom. That evening, Caleb at the kitchen table, laptop open, Stellan Cross filling the screen. I stood in the doorway, watching my son watch his father. The interview was from 2 years ago, some morning show. Stellan looked healthier then, fuller face, stronger voice, before the diagnosis, before the wheelchair, before the word terminal entered his vocabulary. Mr. Cross, you've donated over $2 billion to education initiatives. Why children? Why scholarships specifically? Stellan leaned forward in his chair. Those blue-gray eyes, Caleb's eyes, focused with an intensity that made the interviewer lean back. Because I know what it's like to have nothing. His voice was measured, careful. I didn't come from money. I came from a factory town in Ohio where kids were told their ceiling was the same as their parents' floor. Scholarships saved me. Mentors saved me. I've spent my life trying to save kids who didn't have what I had. Every scholarship is personal to me. Caleb paused the video, turned to me, those inherited eyes shining with the kind of admiration I used to see in church, pure, unquestioning faith. See, Mom? This is what a good man looks like. I forced a smile, crossed my arms to keep them from betraying me. Every scholarship is personal. I knew what that meant now. Every child he saved was a substitute. Every scholarship was a deposit against a debt he could never repay. The son he bought silence for. The life he pretended didn't exist. His philanthropy wasn't generosity. It was penance. And my son was worshiping at the altar of a man who'd been trying to earn back his soul ever since he signed the check that erased them both. Mom? Caleb was watching me. You okay? Fine, just tired. He nodded, turned back to the screen, pressed play. And I stood there, watching my son take notes on how to be a man from the father who paid $500,000 to pretend he didn't exist. 1 week until the gala. Caleb handed me his tablet like it was a golden ticket. Look at the venue, Mom. I looked. The Cross Estate. Those same stone walls I'd seen in news footage, floor-to-ceiling windows, gardens that could swallow our entire house, a venue designed to make normal people feel small. The Legacy Gala, Caleb read aloud, finger scrolling. Black tie, press attendance confirmed. All 12 scholarship finalists will be photographed with Mr. Cross on the main stage. Photographed. There's a reception after. Donors, board members. Stellan does a private meet and greet with each finalist. He looked up, face bright. 20 minutes. I get 20 minutes alone with him, Mom. My heart stopped. 20 minutes. In the same room, face to face. I'd spent 15 years avoiding mirrors when Caleb was around. The way his nose was shaping into something more refined than mine. The way his jaw was squaring. The way those blue-gray eyes looked nothing like my family's green. But Stellan would see it. How could he not? The press takes individual photos, Caleb continued, oblivious. For the foundation website, for news outlets. They said the gala usually gets coverage in the Times, the Post. Photos in the New York Times. Photos in the Washington Post. My son's face next to Stellan Cross's face. Side by side. Same bone structure, same eyes, same chin. Mom? You're doing that thing again. What thing? Looking at me like someone died. I handed back the tablet. I'm just processing. This is a big deal. Yeah, he grinned. It really is. He walked, away, already composing his outfit in his head, already imagining the photos, already counting down the days until he stood beside his hero. And I stood in the kitchen, doing the math I'd been avoiding for 15 years. The resemblance, the timing, Caleb's age, his mother's last name, the location of his birth. Anyone who looked closely enough would see it. Anyone who wanted to destroy Stellan's legacy had everything they needed in one photograph. I wasn't protecting a secret anymore. I was racing an explosion. Friday evening, 1 week and 1 day until the gala. I was folding laundry when the news segment stopped me cold. As Stellan Cross prepares for what many believe will be his final public appearance, his sister Linnea Cross spoke exclusively to our network about continuing his legacy. The screen cut to a woman in her 50s, severe bob, designer black dress, the kind of bone structure that gets called handsome instead of pretty. She sat in what looked like the Cross Estate Library, leather chairs, old books, money visible in every square inch of frame. "My brother wanted his impact to outlive him," Delia said. Her voice was controlled, practiced. "The scholarships, the hospitals, the food banks, that's his real family." The interviewer leaned forward. "There's been speculation about whether Mr. Cross has any biological heirs." "He doesn't." Delia's voice went flat. "My brother never married, never had children. The Cross Foundation is his legacy, and I'll ensure it remains intact." I set down the shirt I'd been folding. No heirs. Foundation is his legacy. If Caleb was revealed, if anyone connected the dots, Delia's entire narrative collapses. The grieving sister protecting a noble legacy becomes the woman who covered up an illegitimate child. The foundation becomes a monument to a lie. She wasn't just protecting Stellan. She was protecting herself. Another enemy, another gatekeeper, another person who needed my son to stay invisible. I muted the TV, walked to the door, opened it. No one there. Just a white envelope on the welcome mat. No return address, just my name, handwritten. The paper inside was cream-colored, expensive, the kind of stationery that costs more than most people's grocery bills. The handwriting was careful but uneven, the script of someone whose hands no longer cooperate fully. I read it once, then again, then a third time because I couldn't believe the words. "Ms. Vance, I know who Caleb is. I've always known. I've watched from a distance. His school photos, his awards, the science fair project that made the local paper when he was 11. I convinced myself the money was kindness, giving you both a clean start. But I was a coward. I'm dying now. You've probably seen the news. I don't want your money back. I don't want a lawsuit. I don't want anything except an answer to the question I've been too afraid to ask for 15 years. Does he hate me? Does he know? If you're willing to tell me, I'm willing to listen, but I understand if you're not. Stellan Cross. I sat down on the hallway floor, back against the wall, letter in my lap. 15 years. I'd built him into a monster. The cold billionaire who paid lawyers to make his pregnant teenager problem disappear. The man who valued his reputation over his own child. But the monster wrote letters. The monster kept school photos. The monster tracked science fair results in local newspapers. The monster was dying, and the only thing he wanted to know was whether his son hated him. He wasn't my enemy. He was my mirror. Two cowards who made the same terrible choice for different reasons. Two people who spent 15 years watching Caleb from a distance, one because she was raising him, one because he paid to not have to. Does he hate me? Does he know? The answer to both questions was no, and I didn't know if that was mercy or cruelty. Before we go further, let me be honest with you for a moment. I can see the numbers. I know you're here. Some of you have been with me for half an hour already. Some of you will stay until the very last word. I also know most of you who are still here aren't subscribed yet. I'm not going to beg. That's not who we are. But I will tell you this. Every story we tell, the research, the writing, the hours of making something that actually matters, it only happens if people like you decide we're worth one click. 1 second. That's all it takes. If these stories mean something to you, if you find yourself thinking about them after they end, if you want to be here when the next one drops, join us. Subscribe now. Become part of this family. Because Linnea's story isn't finished yet, and neither is ours. Now, where were we? Saturday, 24 hours since the letter. I'd read it 47 times. The kitchen table had become a war room. Stellan's letter on one side, the NDA on the other. 2 documents, 2 truths, both written on paper expensive enough to buy a week of groceries. I laid out the options like a jury deliberating a death sentence. Option A, stay silent. Caleb meets his hero, shakes his hand, accepts the scholarship, never knows the truth. Stellan dies with the secret intact. Estate goes to the foundation. My son lives his entire life not knowing who fathered him, and I take that truth to my grave. Option B, tell Caleb privately, before the gala. Show him the letter. Let him choose how to face Stellan. Confront him, ignore him, pretend he doesn't know. Give him the power of his own identity, but also give him the knowledge that his mother lied for 15 years. That every "he wasn't ready to be a father" was a script she'd been paid to recite. Option C, go public. Expose the NDA. Claim paternity. Lawyer up. Fight for inheritance rights. Drag Stellan's legacy through the mud and watch Delia's perfect narrative collapse. Win money. Lose my son. None of them were clean. All of them hurt someone. The question was just who and how much, and whether I could live with the answer. Unknown number, but I knew who it was before I answered. Ms. Vance? Harlan's voice had changed. The professional calm was cracking. We need to talk. Now. I don't have anything to say to you. Stellan sent you a letter. I went still. How do you know that? Because he told me, yesterday, before he sent it. Harlan's breath came faster. He's dying. He's getting sentimental. And he's about to destroy everything I spent 40 years building. Everything you built. You think this is just about protecting Stellan? His voice went high, tight. I drafted that NDA. I made a 19-year-old girl sign away her child's birthright. If this goes public, I'm not just disbarred. I'm ruined. Everything I've ever done for the Cross family gets re-examined. Every deal, every settlement, every... He caught himself, breathed. I will make your life very difficult, Ms. Vance. Very difficult. He said it twice. Men like Harlan never repeat themselves unless they mean it. Whatever you're thinking about doing with that letter, don't. The line went dead. I set the phone down, picked up Stellan's letter, read it one more time. Does he hate me? Does he know? Harlan wasn't protecting Stellan. Harlan wasn't even protecting the foundation. Harlan was protecting Harlan. And I was caught between a dying man's confession and a fixer's desperation, with my son's identity hanging in the balance. Would you have taken the money? The question surfaced unbidden. The moral compass question I'd been avoiding for 15 years. And if you had, would you ever have the courage to undo what you'd done? Sunday night, October 28th. The night before the gala. I stood outside Caleb's bedroom door. His practiced speech echoed through the wood, the same words he'd said 100 times this week, polished until they shone. I never knew my father, but Stellan Cross taught me what a real man leaves behind. In my hand, Stellan's letter, folded, unfolded, refolded. The creases were permanent now. The paper was wearing thin from being handled. I could burn it, right now. Walk to the kitchen, light a match, watch 15 years of guilt turn to ash. Let Caleb meet his hero tomorrow. Let him shake the hand he doesn't know he inherited. Let the secret die with
Stellan, and then with me.
Or I could knock, open the door, sit on his bed, tell him everything. The pregnancy, the lawyers, the money, the lie. Show him the letter from the father who watched from a distance for 15 years. Give him the truth he deserved, and watch him decide what to do with it. Option B, the only option that didn't make me a liar for the rest of my life. The only option that let him choose his own story instead of living inside mine. The only option that might cost me my son. My hand rose to the door. 15 years of silence. 3 weeks of dread. 1 knock away from destroying everything. I knocked. The door opened. Caleb stood there, blue-gray eyes curious, dark hair tousled, still holding the index cards with his speech. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, sat on the edge of his bed. He sat across from me, waiting. The same patient, trusting face he'd shown me since he was old enough to ask questions. "Mom? What's wrong?" I took a breath, unfolded Stellan's letter one last time. "We need to talk about your father." The letter trembled in my hands. Caleb sat across from me on his bed, those blue-gray eyes, his father's eyes, waiting. I started at the beginning, the only place left to start. I was 19. I met him at a charity event. I was catering. He was the guest of honor. We talked. We kept talking. For 3 months that summer, I thought I was something to him. Caleb's face was still, processing, not interrupting. Then I got pregnant, and everything changed. I told him about the lawyers, the conference room, the cold glass table and the men in charcoal suits who looked at me like I was a problem to be solved, not a person to be heard. They gave me a choice. Sign a document stating that Stellan Cross was not the biological father of my child, or leave with nothing and fight a billionaire's legal team until I broke. I was 19. I had $40. I didn't know how to fight anyone. So you signed. I signed. They gave me $500,000 to disappear, to raise you alone, to never speak his name in connection with yours. Caleb's jaw tightened. His eyes moved to the Stellan Cross poster on his wall, the silver-haired philanthropist smiling down at us. His hero. His father. "The man you're meeting tomorrow." I forced the words out. Each one felt like swallowing glass. "Stellan Cross. He's your father, Caleb. He's always been your father." The silence stretched. I watched him process, confusion sliding into disbelief, disbelief hardening into something colder, something I'd never seen on his face before. "You took money." His voice was quiet, flat. "You took money to erase him." "I took money to erase us. From his world. Because I thought his world would destroy us. Because I was 19 and terrified, and I didn't know how to be a mother, and they were offering me a way to survive." "You lied to me." He wasn't asking. "Every time." I asked about my dad. "Every time you said he wasn't ready, that wasn't true. He wasn't even given the chance to be ready. I had no defense. He was right. I told myself I was protecting you. Maybe I was just protecting myself. Caleb looked at the letter in my hand, the cream stationery, Stellan's handwriting. What's that? He sent it, this week. I held it out. He knows about you. He's always known. He's been watching from a distance. He's dying, and he wanted to know if you hate him. Caleb took the letter, read it once, twice. His face didn't change, but his hands did. They shook the way mine had shaken 15 years ago in that conference room. He watched. He kept school photos, science fair clippings, and he never once showed up. No. And you never told me he existed. No. He set the letter down, looked at me, those inherited eyes, now looking at me differently, the way I'd always feared they would. I need to think. He stood, walked to his door, opened it. Caleb, I need to think, Mom. Please. The door closed behind him. I sat in the kitchen, the same table where I'd told him his father wasn't ready, the same chair where I'd watched him quote Stellan Cross like scripture. Midnight passed, then 1, then 2. Upstairs I could hear him, pacing, the floorboards creaking in that pattern I'd memorized when he was a child with nightmares, back and forth, wearing a path in the carpet. Once something hit the wall, hard. A book, maybe, or a fist. I flinched, but didn't move. Part of me wanted to climb those stairs, knock on his door, say something, anything that might close the distance I'd just ripped open. But what would I say? I'm sorry felt hollow. I did it for you was a lie I'd told myself so long I'd almost believed it. Please don't hate me was the truth. But the truth had no currency left between us. So I waited. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Outside, a car passed, headlights sweeping across the kitchen wall like a search beam looking for something worth finding. I thought about Stellan, dying in his estate, writing letters to a woman he'd paid to disappear, collecting school photos like a man pressing flowers from a garden he wasn't allowed to enter. 2 cowards. One with billions. One with a mortgage built on blood money. Both of us sitting in separate rooms, waiting to see if the son we'd failed would give us a second chance we didn't deserve. At 3 a.m., the pacing stopped. I listened for the sound of his door opening. It didn't come. I put my head on the kitchen table, closed my eyes. Didn't sleep. The night before the gala. The night I finally told the truth. The longest night of my life. Dawn came gray and cold. October light filtering through kitchen windows like it wasn't sure it wanted to be there either. I'd moved from the table to the counter, made coffee I couldn't drink, stared at the backyard where Caleb used to play as a child, before he knew what he was missing, before he built a shrine to a stranger who turned out to be blood. I turned. Caleb stood in the kitchen doorway, dressed. His navy blazer, the borrowed one that never quite fit right, white button-up shirt, dark pants pressed, hair combed, eyes red-rimmed but dry, the clothes of a scholarship finalist, the face of a son who'd learned the truth and decided what to do with it. You're still going? It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. He's my father. I have questions. The words were clipped, professional, the voice of someone who'd spent the night rehearsing. A new kind of speech. Not the one about legacy and leaving something behind. Something harder. Something with teeth. Do you want me to come? He looked at me. Those blue-gray eyes, Stellan's eyes, holding none of the warmth they'd carried 24 hours ago. No. The single syllable landed like a gavel. Caleb, you had 15 years to come with me. His voice didn't rise. That was worse. You chose silence every single time. I'm choosing differently. He picked up his car keys, the ones I'd given him for his 15th birthday, the Honda with 94,000 miles, purchased with blood money, maintained with secrets. I don't know when I'll be back. He walked to the front door, opened it, didn't look back. I stood in the kitchen, alone. What do we owe the children we shaped with impossible choices? The question surfaced without warning. The moral weight I'd been carrying for 15 years, finally finding its words. And what do they owe us when they learn how we shaped them? I had no answer, only silence, only the empty space where my son used to be. The Cross estate rose against the October's sky like a monument to everything money could build and nothing it could buy. Caleb parked at the end of the long driveway, walked through the gates, past the stone pillars, past the manicured gardens where white tents had been erected for the gala, past the other scholarship finalists, 12 strangers who'd won the same lottery and had no idea the boy walking among them was the prize they didn't know existed. Foundation staff moved through the crowd. Photographers tested their equipment. Donors in designer clothes sipped champagne at 10 in the morning because that's what the wealthy did when one of their own was dying. They dressed up and toasted legacy. Caleb walked through all of it, eyes fixed on the far end of the garden, where the handlers gathered, where the wheelchair waited. Stellan Cross, 53 years old, gaunt, silver hair thinner than the photographs, blue-gray eyes, identical to the ones Caleb saw in his own mirror every morning, watching the crowd with the patience of a man who knew time was a luxury he couldn't afford. Their eyes met. Stellan's face changed. Recognition. Then something else, something that looked like a wound that had never healed, finally being touched. Caleb crossed the garden. The handlers moved to intercept. Stellan raised one trembling hand, waved them away. The dying billionaire and the erased son, 3 feet apart, 15 years late. Caleb Vance. Stellan's voice was weaker than the interviews, thinner, but the authority was still there, the cadence of a man who'd spent decades expecting to be obeyed. You know who I am. I've always known. Then why didn't you come for me? Stellan's hands rested on the arms of his wheelchair, trembling. Whether from disease or emotion, Caleb couldn't tell. Because I was afraid. Of what it would cost. Of who I'd become if I faced it. I told myself the money was kindness, giving you both a clean start. I told myself you were better off. Were we? The question hung in the air. Behind them, the gala continued. Champagne glasses clinking, photographers adjusting, donors laughing at jokes that had nothing to do with the reckoning happening at the edge of the garden. Stellan had no answer. My mother worked 2 jobs. Caleb's voice was steady, cold, the voice of someone who'd spent the night preparing for this moment. She never dated because she didn't want to confuse me. She built a life out of your hush money, and she hated herself for it every single day. You could have been there. You chose not to be. I know. I used to want to be like you. Caleb's jaw tightened. I watched your interviews, studied your speeches, built you into the father I never had. Now I know what you really are. What am I? A coward, who watched from a distance because he was afraid of what showing up would cost. Stellan closed his eyes, nodded once, The admission of a dying man who knew there was no time left for lies. At the edge of the garden, a figure in a charcoal suit watched. Harlan Thorne, face pale, hands clenched. His entire career of fixing problems, of making inconvenient truths disappear, crumbling in real time. Photographers were noticing. Two wealthy faces having an intense conversation, the kind of moment that made front pages. But Harlan couldn't stop it. The legal threats were irrelevant. The NDA was meaningless. The truth was already happening. Caleb turned, walked away. Stellan watched him go, didn't call after him. The dying billionaire. The son he'd erased. And 15 years of silence, finally, devastatingly, broken. Is cowardice inherited, or is it learned? The question followed Caleb out of the garden, through the gates, back to the car. He didn't have an answer. He just knew he didn't want to find out. Caleb drove away from the Cross estate, left the photographers, left the gala, left the father he'd just met and sentenced in the same conversation. The question now wasn't whether the truth would survive. It was whether any of them would. I sat at the kitchen table until the light changed, morning gray to afternoon gold to evening blue. The same table where I'd fed him baby food with a plastic spoon, the same table where I'd helped him with homework and celebrated birthdays and lied about his father for 15 years. I didn't eat, didn't move, didn't know if he was coming back or if I wanted him to. Because watching him walk through that door and keep walking past me might be worse than waiting forever. At 6:47 p.m., I remember the exact minute, the way you remember things that change everything. I heard a car in the driveway. Then footsteps on the porch. Then the door. Caleb stood in the kitchen doorway, still wearing the navy blazer, still looking older than 15, still carrying a truth that had aged him 3 years in one night. He didn't speak, just walked to the table, pulled out the chair across from me, sat down. We looked at each other. Two people who'd spent 15 years in the same house, on opposite sides of a secret I'd built our lives around. I'm not going to take his money. His voice was steady, decided, not angry, not anymore, just certain. I'm not going to be his heir. I don't want anything from him, his name, his legacy, his foundation. None of it. Caleb, I'm not finished. I closed my mouth, waited. You lied to me. His blue-gray eyes held mine. No flinching. For 15 years, every time I asked about my dad, every time you said he wasn't ready, every time you let me build a stranger into a hero because I needed something to believe in. I know. But you also raised me. He swallowed, the first crack in his composure. You worked 2 jobs. You gave up. His voice caught. You gave up having a life so I could have one. You took the money, but you didn't keep it for yourself. You built this. He gestured at the kitchen, the modest house, the ordinary life. You did what you had to do. I get it. I don't like it. I don't know if I'll ever fully understand it, but I get it. So I'm not going to hate you. I felt something break open in my chest. Not relief, not yet. Something more fragile. The first breath after drowning. But I need time. His jaw set. I need to figure out who I am now that I know where I came from. And I can't do that if you're constantly apologizing or explaining or trying to make it okay. What do you need from me? He thought about it. Really thought. The way he used to think about math problems or essay questions. Careful. Thorough. I need you to just be here. without fixing it, without making it about you. Just here. I nodded, didn't trust my voice. He stood, walked to the refrigerator, opened it, stared inside the way teenage boys do when they don't know what they want, but know they want something. Normal. Almost normal. "There's leftover pasta," I said, "from before." "I know." He pulled out the container. "I'm the one who made it." The smallest joke. The tiniest olive branch. I didn't smile. He didn't smile. But we were in the same room, breathing the same air. And for now, for tonight, that was enough. 1 week later, November 5th, a Tuesday that looked like every other Tuesday, except the television was telling me the man who fathered my son had died in his sleep. Billionaire philanthropist Stellan Cross passed away peacefully at his estate early this morning. He was 53 years old. I stood in the kitchen. Same spot where I'd frozen 3 weeks ago, watching his diagnosis announcement. Same kitchen, same television. Everything different. Cross leaves behind a legacy of charitable giving that touched millions of lives. The Cross Foundation released a statement confirming that his entire estate, valued at approximately $4.2 billion, will be distributed to the foundation's scholarship and hospital programs. He is survived by his sister, Linnea Cross, who will assume leadership of the foundation. Mr. Cross had no living heirs. No living heirs. The lie that bought my house. The truth that died with him. I muted the television, walked to the door, opened it. A courier stood on the porch, young, bored, holding a white envelope like it was any other Tuesday delivery. "Linnea Vance?" "Yes." "This arrived for you, marked for delivery upon the death of Stellan Cross." I took it, signed the clipboard, watched him walk back to his truck. The envelope was thick, expensive paper. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. The same careful, uneven script from the letter that changed everything. Caleb appeared in the kitchen doorway, saw the envelope in my hands. Saw the television muted behind me with Stellan's face frozen on screen. He didn't say anything, just walked to the table, sat down. I sat across from him, the letter between us. "You gonna open it?" I looked at the envelope, at the handwriting of a dead man, at the secrets or apologies or explanations that might be inside, or might not be. I don't know. What do we owe the dead who wronged us? And what do we owe ourselves when the person who hurt us can no longer apologize? The question surfaced without warning, the final moral weight of this story settling into the silence between us. Caleb reached across the table, not for the letter, for my hand. "I'll be here when you do." His fingers were warm. 15 years old and already learning that presence matters more than words. I didn't open the letter. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe never. But I set it on the table between us, and I looked at my son, this boy I'd lied to, and sacrificed for, and shaped with impossible choices. And I saw something I hadn't seen in 3 weeks. Not forgiveness, not yet, but willingness. To stay, to try, to build something new where the lies used to live. The letter stayed unopened, but we were in the same room. And that was everything. Same kitchen, same table, same woman. But nothing is the same. 3 weeks ago, I stood in this room and watched a billionaire announce he was dying. And I knew, the way you know things in your bones before your brain catches up, that the secret I'd buried for 15 years was about to dig itself up. I told the truth, not because I was brave, because I couldn't carry it anymore. My son confronted his father, called him a coward, walked away from an inheritance that could have changed his life.
And then he came home.
There's a letter on this table, Stellan's last words. Whatever apology or explanation or confession he wrote before he died, I haven't opened it. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. Some truths don't need to be read to be understood. Some questions don't need answers to be resolved. What do children owe parents who shaped them with impossible choices? And what do parents owe children when those choices are exposed? I spent 15 years protecting a lie. My son spent 15 minutes telling the truth. I don't know which of us was braver, but I know which of us is still here. This is American Billionaire Tales, where fortune meets fate. I'm Michael, and this story of blood money and buried fathers, of lies that build houses and truths that tear them down, this is what we do. We find the wounds beneath the wealth, the cost beneath the comfort, the human beneath the headline. Every story we tell asks the same question: what would you sacrifice to survive? And what would you sacrifice to be free? If this story stayed with you, if you're still thinking about Linnea and Caleb and the letter that may never be opened, then you belong here. Subscribe. Join us, because next time, another empire will crumble, another secret will surface, another family will learn what truth really costs. And we'll be here to tell it.